The following is a paid program by the Whitley Law Firm. Welcome to Attorneys on Call, the program that gives you free legal information from the Whitley Law Firm. Now, here's your host, Drew Smith.
And hi again, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Attorneys on Call. We have got a very special show planned for you today, and over the next 30 minutes, you're going to learn a lot about specifically what is going on with a consumer product that most of us have used for many, many years, and the dangers involved in this consumer product. So a lot of great information coming your way over the next half hour. As always, in studio with us is Ben Whitley and Whitney Butcher from the Whitley Law Firm. Great to see both of you today.
Good to be here, Drew.
We have a fascinating show. We're going to get into more of the details of that a little bit later on. But Ben, this is a North Carolina law firm that your dad started many years ago. You're a family firm. You represent folks all across the state of North Carolina that might need legal representation,
right,
whether it's seriously injured in an automobile crash, workers' compensation claims, Social Security disability, things like that. So kind of give our viewers a little overview of the Whitley Law Firm and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Drew. And like you said, my dad has been practicing law for over 40 years and started the firm down east in Kinston, North Carolina, and now we have a statewide practice. I work with my dad and my brother Whit and three very talented attorneys, Whitney Butcher being one of them that's here today with me. And we represent people, Drew, not insurance companies or not businesses, and it's usually people that have had something bad happen to them, whether it be a car accident, they get hurt at work, or they have an injury or disease that prevents them from returning to work and they have to file a Social Security disability claim. So we're dealing with people that are under a lot of stress. They may not have an income coming in. So it's why I do what I do is helping people put their life back together and try to recover something to get them back to where they were before that incident happened.
When I've talked to your dad many times about this, he's always said that he started this firm because he felt like the people needed an advocate and someone to really fight for them, because the insurance companies have batteries of lawyers that are representing them and working for them, but the regular working folks in North Carolina need a voice.
Absolutely, and that's what we do, Drew. We speak for people, and we speak for people against the powerful. And a lot of times, these, like you said, these big corporations, these insurance companies, they've got at their disposal lawyers, engineers, experts, and they're out there in car accidents specifically, or tractor-trailer accidents, what we usually see, and they're on the scene at the beginning and they're collecting evidence. And so we need to bring the same level of skill to the person who's injured in the state so that they can fight these insurance companies, and that's what we do. And the way that our fees are paid is that you don't pay us unless we win, unless there is a recovery. So we can get involved in your case, we can start on day one and bring that level of representation that's needed.
So I think a lot of people probably have a misconception that, hey, if I call that law firm, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars per hour, it's going to be very expensive, but the initial inquiry is always free, right?
That's right, Drew, and that's a real important point. Is that first phone call or that first meeting, that is a free consultation. And a lot of times, Drew, I get calls and I talk to people, whether it be from a car accident or they're hurt at work, and they may not need an attorney. It may be a situation where I can give them that free advice, let them know what they need to know as far as property damage claims in car accidents, or if it's a minor injury in a workers' comp claim, I can give them that information, and oftentimes they don't need to hire me, and I'll tell them that, and hopefully save them some money. But the most important thing to know is that it's a free call, it's a free consultation, and you can also go on our website, which is listed here at the bottom of the screen, and you can interact with us online. We have online chat operators. You can send us an email, and then also, most importantly, you can go online and get information that also may be helpful if you're not ready to make that first call for.
So the 800 number, also whitleylawfirm.com, great first step. So let's take the person who's maybe been injured in a car accident, maybe it's a loved one, a friend, a family member, and they're getting deluged with solicitations from attorneys all over saying, I'll represent you. Why would they choose Whitley Law Firm to represent them?
Sure, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've just recently talked to someone last week, and they'd been in a car accident, and it had only been maybe 3 days, and they were telling me about what was going on in their mailbox, and they were just receiving letters and packages from law firms all over the state, and a deluge of information. So I think that what makes us different is essentially that we're going to be accessible. We are going to make sure that an attorney handles the case, that you get to talk to an attorney. And of course, we're bringing a high level of experience to the table.
Sure.
You know, we've got 6 attorneys, combined legal experience of over 80 years, and experience very often in handling a case just like yours. So I think that's what makes us different, and that's why I encourage someone to give us a call. Like I said before, it's a free call so that we can talk about your specific case. We can talk about what our action steps would be in your case and what we can do to help you.
Whitney, what is that like when somebody initially reaches out to the Whitley Law Firm because they have a concern and they might need representation? Kind of talk us through that initial conversation.
So oftentimes folks will call us, like Ben mentioned, and it may be a case that we can try and give them enough advice they can handle on their own. Unfortunately, with really severe and significant cases, we have a young client who suffered a really bad brain injury. His dad, for example, tried to handle it with the insurance company on his own for a few months. It just became too overwhelming.
Okay.
So being able to step in and take that pressure off of him so he could focus on his son is really, I think it really helps him, and it's really good for us knowing that we're able to help shoulder that burden that's falling on the family in this difficult time.
You know, Ben, I always think that it's very interesting how the state of North Carolina has contributory negligence, which is kind of a big legal term. You could maybe explain that a little bit compared to comparative negligence in a lot of other states. And so having an experienced law firm behind you in a case like that in North Carolina seems to be so much more important.
Absolutely, and contributory negligence is kind of a fancy word, but not many states have this law, and a lot of people don't realize that in North Carolina that is what we face here. And what it simply means is that if the person bringing the claim, the injured worker, or I'm sorry, not the injured worker, but the person involved in a car accident or any other type of injury claim,
okay,
if the person that's bringing the claim is themselves even 1% at fault, they may be barred from recovery. And so that's why it's important on a case that, especially with significant injuries, to get out there very early and talk to witnesses, interview people while it's still fresh in their mind, because the facts about how something happened are very important, especially when we're facing that burden out there of this contributory negligence bar of recovery. So we have to be very careful about that in the cases in North Carolina.
In the past on the program, we've talked about that a little bit. So in a situation, you're at a red light, it turns green, you start going through the intersection, somebody runs the red and T-bones you, but if you're considered to be, just like you said, 1% at fault of that, you don't get anything.
It could be. I mean, there are a lot of times you do see that in intersection cases, you know, where we may have a situation where it's a factual dispute. Was the light turning from yellow to red, or some kind of scenario like that, where we've got to be careful. We need to know what the facts are, and that's why it's important to get a skilled, experienced personal injury lawyer on your side immediately.
We have a fascinating show, as I mentioned, because we're going to be talking more in just a moment about a consumer product that I would almost guarantee 99% of you out there watching have probably got in your bathroom medicine cabinet or somewhere that you've used over the past. So please stay with us, because we're going to have a lot of important information coming your way in just a few moments. This is Attorneys on Call.
I'm Bob Whitley, the voice of North Carolina accident victims.
Bob helped me get the surgery I needed when I was hit by a drunk driver.
If you're hurt, I'd like to be your voice too. Call Whitley Law, 800-785-5000.
I went to assist with a car accident, and during that time I was involved in my own vehicle collision. They provided me with all the information I needed. If I called and needed money for physical therapy during the time of the case, they helped. If I wasn't getting my prescriptions filled, they helped. They were there 100% of the time. It was a warm feeling to know that there were people that I could call, and if I had a problem during this time, that they were going to fix it.
For your free consultation, call Whitley Law Firm at 800-785-5000. Call us now and get the Whitley advantage.
I'm Bob Whitley, the voice of North Carolina accident victims.
Bob helped me get the physical therapy I needed when a texting driver hit me.
If you're hurt, I'd like to be your voice too. Call Whitley Law, 800-785-5000.
And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. As we mentioned in the last segment, we're talking about a consumer product that probably most of us have used at one time or another. And Ben Whitley and Whitney Butcher from the Whitley Law Firm. And Whitney, you do a lot of work in this area. And what are we specifically talking about here? Tell us about this product and why this is so important.
So today we're talking about, as you mentioned, a product most people have in their medicine cabinets. It's Johnson & Johnson's baby powder, the big white bottle. You've seen it probably since you were a young child. We are concerned really about women's use of Johnson & Johnson's baby powder and other talc-based products causing ovarian cancer, which is an extremely deadly form of female cancers and really is hard to diagnose.
That big white bottle of Johnson & Johnson baby powder that I have seen for many years, and that, like I said, I know I have it in my house. I know most people probably have that. And it's talcum powder, right?
Right.
Why is it specifically that brand? And talk a little bit about the application to women and why it's causing or could be causing these problems.
So Johnson & Johnson's baby powder and then another product manufactured by Johnson & Johnson called Shower to Shower, that's by far and away the vast majority of the market. Those are both talc-based products, meaning the majority of the product is talcum powder, which is a mineral that has been classified as a Class 2B carcinogen by a subset of the World Health Organization, their cancers organization. So it's a carcinogen when breathed in. Studies have suggested it's a carcinogen when a woman applies it as part of her feminine hygiene routine.
Okay.
External application can transmigrate up the reproductive system and cause ovarian cancer.
Wow. So what in terms of is happening in the legal community right now in terms of lawsuits that are going on, and I know that obviously you're very concerned about this, and people that are watching right now, if you have women in your family, if you are a woman and you've used this product, what would you urge them to do initially?
Absolutely call an attorney. If ovarian cancer is more of a rare female cancer, and talcum powder use over an extended period of time can increase a woman's likelihood of developing it by about 30 to 40%. So that's pretty significant when the other risk factors are pretty minimal. Recently, we've actually talked about this before on this show. About a year ago, we talked about a verdict that came out of South Dakota in 2013. Recently, folks may have heard in the news about a verdict out of St. Louis State Court in February for $72 million, and then again one in May of 2016 for $55 million. These were for women who have used Johnson & Johnson's baby powder and Shower to Shower for years and then subsequently developed ovarian cancer.
Ben, what we're talking about here is what I've heard you and Whitney and other attorneys in your firm say, profits over people. Is that what we're talking about?
There's some form of that, sure, Drew. I mean, you know, we've talked on this show before about the medical device and dangerous drug cases that we handle, and some of the other things that usually are related to medical device, such as the hip claims, the metal on metal hip claims we've talked about before.
Correct.
The IVC blood filters, these were medical products that may have had some questionable testing involved before they were put out on the market, and they were put for doctors to install in people, and they were things that went wrong and people got hurt. And that's what we're usually talking about. And in these talc cases, this is different. This is an actual consumer product. So
yeah, you go into any pharmacy and buy it.
Sure. And one of the things that Whitney will talk about a little bit later is in these lawsuits, in these verdicts, evidence has come out that Johnson & Johnson was warned, or there's been studies that showed that this was a possible problem. Some facts that we can talk about that really made me very angry, because if they knew about it and didn't tell people about it, then they should be responsible. And you know, a lot of it, when you really read about these things, a lot of it reminds me of the stories we heard when they kind of broke the tobacco companies, and they found that the tobacco companies for years and years knew there was a problem, but just kind of kept it
on the down low,
because you know, because they were concerned about sales, you know, obviously, and that's a huge motivator in these types of products, to keep the sales going and not to scare people, and that's not what we're trying to do here today. We're just trying to ask consumers to be educated, because 2 verdicts that are found against the defendant, Johnson & Johnson, of that magnitude means something. You know, these juries, they saw something. They saw something that angered them, because that's what we usually see when you see these large verdicts. It is to send a message, because a company like Johnson & Johnson, you know, what is the thing that most worries them, you know, is their bottom line. And what's the one thing that's going to make them pay attention is an effect to their bottom line. And that's what these juries in Missouri were sending the message to, in my opinion.
Whitney, you talked a little bit about ovarian cancer, and I know through your research, you've done a lot of research in this area. That's one of those female cancers that's really hard to detect, right? And a lot of times when they find it, it's kind of too late.
Right, so a lot of our clients will have sort of a roundabout way that they got diagnosed. So they'll have been feeling some abdominal discomfort and their primary care doctor will send them to a GI specialist.
Okay.
They might be experiencing some dull back pain. The symptoms are very vague and there's no routine testing that tests for ovarian cancer. That's part of why it's so deadly. So oftentimes when it's discovered, it's at an advanced stage already, and that's why the survival rate tends to be relatively low. One of the things Ben mentioned a minute ago about these recent verdicts, the one in February and the one in May, the compensatory damages were several $1,000,000. The reason that the verdicts were so high is because the jury saw documents that rose to the level of punitive damages. In the first case, they awarded $62 million in punitive damages, and that's to punish Johnson & Johnson because of what they learned the company knew and when they knew it. For example, Dr. Kramer, he's one of the plaintiff's experts in these cases and trials. He's been studying the link between talcum powder and ovarian cancer since 1982 when his first study was published. An in-house doctor for Johnson & Johnson approached him, urging him not to go forward with the information. So since 1982, at least, this company has known that talcum powder used during external application as a part of a feminine hygiene routine from women can cause ovarian cancer, and they've done nothing about it.
So that's what we're talking about here. That's why there are lawsuits pending, right? Because this is a case of where a huge corporation is withholding information from consumers.
Right, and so there are a couple of other things I think that inflame the jury. So the condom industry, for example, they used to instruct folks to dust with talcum powder. They stopped doing that once the journal articles started coming out linking talcum powder use with ovarian cancer. A subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, in the mid-1990s, again following some of these studies, they used to produce a diaphragm that they would instruct to be dusted with talcum powder. They urged folks to no longer dust the diaphragm with talcum powder because it could be dangerous. So a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson's consumer products is saying, don't use talcum powder, but the larger corporation is saying nothing about it. I think probably one of the most inflammatory things the jury learned, the talc supplier and miner, they're also named in the lawsuits. You'll see them as Emery's. They used to be Luzinac. When they would mine the talc and send it to Johnson & Johnson, after these studies came out, there was a big warning on it that said, warning, this is a carcinogen. Removed the label by Johnson & Johnson and then just pushed it along as safe old baby powder.
So where does the federal government come in all this, and the FDA and such? Is there, do they have anything, are they involved in this at all? Because I would think that the FDA, if they found out that this was a carcinogen, that they would demand or make it known that this company has to tell consumers that it is.
The FDA's action and then some national cancer groups' actions have not been quite as strong as the arm from the World Health Organization. So the FDA has mentioned that talc may be a possible carcinogen, I believe. When inhaled, I think it's pretty widely known. It used to be, used to have asbestos in it, so it was considered a carcinogen at that point. But the FDA hasn't really taken any swift action on this right now, and there's some conflicting advice between cancer organizations about exactly how dangerous it is, but over the past 30 years there are about 23 epidemiological studies linking talcum powder use through external application with ovarian cancer, and that's really hard to deny.
If there are women watching our program, once again, WhitleyLawFirm.com is the website, the 800 number as well. A great first step, because you might be sitting there thinking, you know what, I've used this product for a number of years. It's been part of my routine, my daily routine. I don't know if I have a problem, but I might have a problem. WhitleyLawFirm.com and the 800 number, a great first step, because you can talk right to you, Whitney, because this can be a sensitive issue for a woman, and I would think that most women want to talk to a woman about this.
Absolutely, and that's what I find. I'm available by the phone for a free initial conversation. If it sounds like something we want to talk about in more detail, I'm happy to meet with women all over the state. We've got offices all over the state, and I'm always happy to sit down and have a confidential client meeting with them just to find out a little bit more about exactly what happened and see if we can help.
I think that's important, because I think in these types of situations, I think a face-to-face visit would go a long way.
Absolutely, and when you're dealing with something like this that affects females, you know, folks may remember us talking about the transvaginal mesh cases. Right. That's a very difficult thing for a lot of women to talk about. Women talking about their daily feminine hygiene routine is not an easy thing to mention to a man, no offense. It's something that if you make them feel comfortable, I think you can really open up and find out if a company did something wrong that caused a life-threatening cancer diagnosis. It's important to look a little closer at that.
Once again, talcum powder, Johnson & Johnson baby what is it called? Baby powder?
Johnson & Johnson's baby powder and Johnson & Johnson's shower to shower.
Okay, so that is the product that we're talking about today, and we're going to have much more on this issue next on Attorneys on Call.
I'm Bob Whitley, the voice of North Carolina accident victims.
Bob helped me get the physical therapy I needed when a texting driver hit me.
If you're hurt, I'd like to be your voice too. Call Whitley Law, 800-785-5000.
We went on vacation and I had an accident. Having a good old time, and then wham, in the back, we were hit. We were okay, because everything could be fixed. Everybody was alive. When I called Whitley, I was comfortable with them. They were very knowledgeable. Phone stopped ringing. Bills got paid. Car got fixed. And they were there for me, and I really appreciate that.
For your free consultation, call Whitley Law Firm at 800-785-5000. Call us now and get the Whitley advantage.
I'm Bob Whitley, the voice of North Carolina accident victims.
Bob helped me get the surgery I needed when I was hit by a drunk driver.
If you're hurt, I'd like to be your voice too. Call Whitley Law, 800-785-5000.
Welcome back to Attorneys on Call. Talcum powder and how it may be connected to ovarian cancer. That's our topic today on Attorneys on Call. Whitney, you've been meeting with a lot of women over the past several months on this issue. Tell me about some of the conversations you've had with those clients and where they're at right now.
Well, it's heartbreaking, Drew. One female that comes to mind I met with at her home in North Carolina, and she had just finished her last chemo treatment earlier that week. She'd lost all of her hair. She did not look well. She didn't seem well, and she told me what an impact the ovarian cancer diagnosis has had on her. She had used talcum powder for years. She actually said, if my body's not covered in talcum powder, I don't feel clean. That was just how she was raised and what she thought. Another client that comes to mind is stage 4 right now, and they've stopped treatment, and she's very sick, and we're not quite sure exactly how much longer she has to live, but she grew up with her mom using talcum powder on her, and then when she was a teenager, her mom showed her how to use it, and she's used it ever since, and said, it's baby powder, nothing could be safer than this, right? That was her belief for so many years, and she used it for decades and was diagnosed about 2 years ago and is essentially a terminal diagnosis at this point. The last case that comes to mind is unfortunately a case where the woman passed away. She married her second husband a little bit later in life. About a year after they were married, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Battled it for 4 years and then ultimately passed away. And so, you know, their marriage, their relationship, this great time in their lives was dampened significantly because she was sick for the majority of their relationship. So it's really, ovarian cancer affects people differently. You know, we've got clients who are in remission and doing really well, which is great. But unfortunately, it is a very dangerous cancer, and it can have severe repercussions for women who are diagnosed at late stages.
How would a woman know if she might have a claim in a case like this? So
we are currently investigating cases where a female used talcum powder products for 4 years or more, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and there's something called the BRCA gene. You may have heard about it. It increases, it's a mutation that will result in an increased risk of breast or ovarian cancer. Some folks have had genetic testing done, others have not. If there's a positive marker for the BRCA gene, that may be something that's an issue, but really if any woman watching, if anyone knows of a woman out there who used talcum powder for 4 years or more and was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, it's definitely worth speaking to an attorney about.
And you definitely want to reach out to your doctor, right?
Right. So if you've not been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, sometimes people will say, well, I've used talcum powder. What are some of the symptoms?
Okay.
It can be a very dull abdominal pain, back pain, bleeding, things like that. If those are happening and you're not sure what's going on, I would encourage folks immediately to speak with their doctor about it. Because the earlier you catch it, like any cancer, the better the survival rates are. So those are some of the symptoms. They're a little bit vague, but certainly encourage folks to speak with their doctor if they have any questions.
Johnson & Johnson, big company, been around for a long time. We all know about it. It's one of those brands that we are very familiar with. What has been their response to some of these lawsuits that have the plaintiffs have won and these big settlements that they've received? What's going on from the company standpoint?
So there have been no settlements as of yet. And
nothing
Johnson
has been paid.
Well, so there have been 2 big verdicts,
okay,
but nothing has been paid. Johnson & Johnson has appealed both verdicts. So neither the first woman's family, she passed away, so her family carried on the lawsuit. They've not received any money. The woman who was diagnosed and got the verdict in May, she's not received any money because it's tied up in appeals. Johnson & Johnson had a spokesperson actually come out and say, we stand behind our product, we don't believe it's dangerous, and we believe 30 years of science supports that. We've talked already about the 23 epidemiological studies that suggest an increased risk, so it seems a bit frivolous to not even be acknowledging that some danger exists here.
So they're saying we haven't done anything wrong, basically.
Exactly, exactly. And during the course of both trials, their defense, one of the most compelling pieces of evidence to the jury, I believe, was you've got the studies that show talc can cause ovarian cancer, but in each of the cases that have gone to trial, the microscopes are so advanced you can actually take the pathology slides and the tissue samples and see talc particles in the tumor or the tissue that was removed.
Interesting.
So to a jury, I mean, that's pretty compelling evidence that external application can transmigrate and ultimately, land in the ovaries and cause the cancer. Johnson & Johnson denies that that's possible. They say it's later contamination, and so they're not even willing to admit, with that physical evidence that it's possible.
That's evidence that has been proven in court, basically, or?
Right. So under federal law, most hospitals keep pathology slides for about 10 years.
Okay.
So if a woman has ovarian cancer and then has a hysterectomy, they'll remove tissue that can later be tested. Now, during the initial testing and pathology report, they're not going to be looking for talc. If the slides and the tissue samples still exist when we get involved, we can take a look at that with a microscope and actually see the presence of talc particles in the tissue.
What are you telling your current clients right now in terms of they probably know about these other cases and what's happening there, and that Johnson & Johnson is still saying, no, we haven't done anything wrong? That's a tough conversation to have right now with your clients, I would guess? It
is, and one question we get was, how long is this going to take? And,
sure.
And we have no idea of knowing and no way of knowing, but it's important that someone, if they think they may have a talcum powder claim, contact a lawyer as soon as possible, because those tissue samples are only kept for a number of time. You want to get involved as quickly as possible so that we can preserve any physical evidence that may exist. Getting the pathology report up front is going to be the most important first step in everything, and the sooner that you can get the ball rolling and all that, the better for the woman's case.
Ben, if someone out there might have a claim and they want to contact Whitley Law Firm, a lot of great, easy ways to do it on whitleylawfirm.com, the 800 number. They can email, right, and get an email right back.
That's right, and on our website we're going to have information about these claims. We also brought some of the evidence that was introduced into the trial. We'll put this on the website so that folks can look at some of the studies and some of the issues that the juries in Missouri also saw too. So a lot of great information on the website. I'd encourage folks to go on there and start a dialogue. And remember, the initial consultation is always free and it's confidential.
And I think the confidentiality part of it is important, and woman being able to speak to a woman like Whitney who's, can relate to her, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and being able to speak to an attorney is important. Sometimes, folks will call us because they've seen national ads flash on the TV and they call someone out of state and don't know who they're speaking with.
Right.
Being able to sit down with a local female attorney would go a long way, in my opinion anyways. I think it does for a lot of our clients. This
has been great. I know I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot today. Very important topic. Thank you for sharing this with us today. And thank you so much for watching Attorneys on Call. We'll see you next time right here. Have a great night.